Hey, true crime family. I'm your host, B.W. Sloan, forensic astrologer and death investigator. Now, before I get into the case, for those of you that are new here, I would like to just kind of explain what it is that I do. So, forensic pattern recognition, that is the FPR. That's what the FPR method stands for. And it is a criminal investigation tool that uses fixed planetary positions and behavior patterns to solve cold cases. This is the same way that a fingerprint analysis applies pattern recognition to a ridgeline. So I don't light a candle somewhere in the dark and tell you that Mercury is in retrograde or that your grandparents are really not compatible. This isn't what I do. Even though that astrology is amazing and I do follow that myself, what I do is on the forensic level. And today we are doing a full deep dive into the Chris and Shanann Watts case. Now, when I first set the timestamp for this particular case into the FPR method, the very first thing that the chart said to me was that you can see here is that Gemini is on the ASC. And Gemini signals two different things entirely, but what's beautiful about already seeing it here on the ASC, it's telling me to look for multiples. And so it's saying that there's more than one victim. And in this particular case, we have four. All right. So we're going to hold on to that because now I want to get into this story. For those who aren't familiar with the Chris Watts case, I'm going to give you a quick rundown. In August of 2018, a Colorado man named Chris Watts murdered his pregnant wife, Shanann, and their two daughters, Bella, 4 years old, and Celeste, who had just turned 3. He drove their bodies to an Anadarko oil site, and it was called Survey 319. This is where he buried his wife, Shanann, in a shallow grave and dropped both girls through an 8-inch hatch into 2 separate crude oil tanks. Then, at 7:43 that morning, while he was still at the site where he had just disposed of his family's bodies, a coworker texted Chris asking how things looked out there. And Chris Watts replied, "Fresh, LOL." At 8:25, he made a staged 23-second call to Shanann's phone. At 8:26, he searched and called the girls' school, the Primrose School of Erie at Vista Ridge, and told the staff that his daughters would not be attending anymore. At 9:05, Shanann's phone received a reminder for her prenatal appointment. Seconds later, he called his realtor. At 10:10, he searched Google for the lyrics to Battery by Metallica, a song with the line, "Cannot kill the family," in it. At 10:33, he started searching for hotels in Aspen and called the Westin Snowmass Resort. He was planning a vacation. That is the story everyone thinks they know. Husband confessed, sentenced, over. Now, the chart does not agree that it's over because now here is where the story the public knows starts to fall apart because while Shanann was pregnant and posting their life online and genuinely believing she was building something with this man, Chris Watts was already somewhere else entirely. Not physically, not yet, but mentally, emotionally. He had already left, and he had left with someone. There was a woman at Anadarko named Nichol Kessinger, a geoscience contractor. She worked on the environmental side of the company, where Chris had just been promoted to field coordinator, which meant for the first time he was spending real time inside the office instead of out in the field. He walked into her office one day in June of 2018 with, according to her, without a wedding ring, introduced himself. They started talking. And here's the part that should make your stomach drop. This did not start after Shanann left for North Carolina. That is the version that makes Chris look like a lonely husband who just made a bad decision while his wife was away. That is not what happened. This started in June. Shanann was still home. The girls were still home. She was already pregnant. He was building something with this woman while his pregnant wife was asleep down the hall. By the time Shannon and the girls flew to North Carolina at the end of June, it had already escalated into something serious. He was seeing Nichol 4 or 5 times a week. He told her they were separated. Divorce almost final, just working out the finances. Then from August 1st through August 7th, Chris visited Shanann and the girls in North Carolina. And while he was there, he called Nichol and told her the divorce was done, final. She could start thinking about what came next. He made that call from North Carolina while Shanann was in the next room. Now, here is something also the public version of this story consistently glosses over. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. On the night of August 11th, the same night Chris took Nichol to the Lazy Dog restaurant and paid with a gift card. After their evening together, Nichol Kessinger went home and opened her phone, and she searched Chris Watts, Shanann Watts, Ronnie Watts, that's Chris's father, and 2825 Saratoga Trail, the home address, the house where Shanann lived, where those little girls slept. She looked up the house. At 10:15 that same night, Shanann was on her phone from Arizona Googling Lazy Dog menu and Lazy Dog restaurant, find a location, trying to figure out the charge that just hit the joint account from the restaurant she didn't know he'd been to. At the exact same time, Nichol was looking up the home address. Shanann was quietly investigating the same man from 3 states away. Nichol had already searched man I'm having an affair with will leave his wife. That's what she typed into Google. She did this on July 24th. Then on August 4th at 12:45 in the morning, she spent over 2 hours browsing dresses, wedding dresses online for 2 hours in the middle of the night. And later that same month, she searched marrying your mistress. Those are not the searches of a woman who thought she was casually seeing a separated man. Those are the searches of a woman tracking a situation very carefully. Shanann, meanwhile, had no idea. She was texting her friend from Addie from Arizona, trying to figure out what was wrong with her marriage, picking herself apart. Now, she had flown to Arizona on a work trip. So at this moment, Chris is at home watching the girls while she's on a work trip. So she texted Addie, I sometimes can be bitchy and he gets that side of me. I know I tend to make him feel like he isn't able to do things because I have control issues. He said the other night he wishes I would just let him hang up a picture. Shanann was blaming herself for his coldness, for his distance. She had ordered a book called Hold Me Tight, 7 Conversations for a Lifetime of Love, to save her marriage. It was delivered to the house on August 10th. It was found during the search of the home in the garbage trash can. He threw it away before she even got home to read it. She asked him to send pictures of the girls while she was away because she missed them. And he sent them roughly 18 hours before he murdered them. Those photos became some of the last known images of Bella and Cece alive. Now, all these images that you see on the screen are actually from the deposition. So I'm going to be posting this up so that you can see as I talk about each part of the deposition. Now, on the flight home from Phoenix that Sunday, she was emotionally wound up. She needed to get home and have the conversation she'd been building toward. Her friend Nicole Atkinson picked her up from the airport. They got home in the early hours of August 13th. Shanann walked inside, and Chris Watts had already been in his daughter's room before she ever got there. Now, in prison letters, there's a third account that went further than anything that he told to the FBI, because he wrote that he went to Bella's room first, then Cece's, used a pillow from their beds, and then both girls wound up waking back up. When he went back to the master bedroom and got into bed and waited, he realized that they had woken, and he was so mad that they were still alive. Shanann arrived now. They had their confrontation. She told him he would never see those kids again, and he strangled her in that bed. He dragged her body down the stairs Bella walks in and asks, "What are you doing with Mommy?" And he told her Mommy was sick. He loaded Shanann into his truck, already backed up against the garage, which is something that his neighbor had never once seen him do in a report, and put Bella and Cece, still alive, in the back seat directly above their mother's body on the floor. The girls fell asleep against each other on the drive. Now, at Survey 319, I think that's how it's pronounced, Survey. At 319, he pulled Shanann out and laid her on the ground. The girls woke up. "What are you doing to Mommy?" He killed Cece first, smothered her with her own blanket while Bella sat there and watched. He came back to the truck. Bella was still there holding her toy. She looked at her father and asked, "Is the same thing going to happen to me as Cece?" He said in his confession he wasn't sure if he told her yes before he did it. He said every time he closes his eyes, he hears her last words, "Daddy, no." He dropped both girls through an 8-inch hatch into 2 separate crude oil tanks, buried Shanann near the tanks, then texted his coworker, "Fresh, LOL," then drove back and started planning a trip to Aspen. By 10 a.m., Shanann had missed that prenatal appointment, and Nichol Atkinson, the best friend, not the girlfriend, 2 different women, is not the kind of person who waits around. She texted, called Chris, drove to the house, car in the garage, girl's car seat still in it, door latched from the inside. She called police. When Chris showed up over an hour later, he walked straight into the garage alone before he let anyone inside. Then he stood in that house with an officer present, and he was on the phone texting while police are asking about his missing pregnant wife, texting. The master bed was stripped bare and sheets were gone. Shanann's ring on the nightstand. She never took it off. Her phone was jammed between the couch cushions, the dog caged and frantic, and Chris calmly nodding, all while texting. At 1:11 in the afternoon, he sent another staged message to Shanann, "Where are you?" While investigators were inside that house, the television was playing. First, it showed a pregnant woman and her unborn child, and then it cut to a skull immersed in oil. A pregnant mother. Death. Concealment in oil. And I'll tell you what the chart says about that when we get there. So now it's Tuesday. It's national news. Chris does television interviews hoping Shanann is decompressing. Wednesday, investigators sit him down. They already have the affair from the Anadarko security manager who called investigators that morning before the polygraph. They put Nicole's name in front of Chris. He denies it. He takes the polygraph and shows deception indicated. The examiner, the CBI agent Tammy Lee, tells him she doesn't believe a single word. He doesn't ask for a lawyer. He asks for his father. In that recorded room, he tells his dad Shanann killed the girls, that he witnessed something unthinkable and strangled her in response. His father believed every word. He was sitting across from the man who murdered his grandchildren, and he actually believed him. It didn't hold. 5 life sentences, no parole. He's currently in Wisconsin. In his 2019 prison interview, right now I'd have a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, and more than likely a 1-month-old son and a beautiful wife. And right now, it's just me. He said he never would have thought his marriage was bad if he hadn't met the woman he was having the affair with. He said her name contributed to what happened, but that she never asked him to do it. The chart has something to say about that as well. Now let's talk about Nichol Kessinger, because cooperating witness, devastating bystander, and woman who was lied to, that is not the complete picture the record paints. She did not walk in voluntarily. The Anadarko security manager called investigators the morning of the polygraph. Word got back to Nichol. that police were asking about Chris. Her employer's network got there before she did. There's a difference between coming forward and getting ahead of something already headed in your direction. August 13th, the same day Shannon and those babies are reported missing, at 11:09 that night, Nichol Kessinger called Chris and held a 51-minute conversation. 51 minutes with the man whose pregnant wife and 2 daughters just went missing. That call is deleted. Why is she calling him? If you are genuinely in the dark, if you just found out through the news that your boyfriend's pregnant wife and 2 babies are missing and you had no idea, you call the police. You call a friend. You do not call him. You do not have a 51-minute conversation with him and then delete it. At 12:02 in the morning on August 14th, she searched Google for Shanann Watts. That was deleted. At 2:07 a.m., Watts called her. She called him back seconds later. Another 10-minute conversation. Not calling the police, calling him. Back and forth, him and Nichol, all while he is also calling back the police, almost as if he's telling her what the police told him in between conversations. Now, while investigators are trying to piece together where his family went, this is all happening. At noon, Nichol, she spent nearly 4 hours searching news accounts of Shanann's disappearance. Every search deleted. At 5 p.m., she searched, can cops trace text messages? Then, how long do phone companies keep text messages? Then, difference between text message content and text message detail. All deleted. This is not a woman in shock. This is a woman doing research. And here is another thing that you don't know. There are 2 separate deletion events in this record. The first happened during the affair while Shanann was still alive. According to page 575 of the discovery documents, Nichol had already asked Chris to delete his messages to keep the relationship secret. She'd also told her friend Charlotte to delete theirs before the murders. Before the murders, she asked her girlfriend to delete all their messages about Chris, and she deleted her own messages before the event. She was managing the paper trail before there was ever a crime. She told investigators she didn't know Chris was still married. So right there is an obstruction of justice. She lied. And immediately, as the words came out of her mouth, she's already committed a felony. She claimed police were the ones who told her Shannon was pregnant. That's how she found out. That's lie number 2. No tears on record, by the way. A pregnant woman and 2 beautiful little girls are dead, and the woman who says she completely blindsided is on the phone with them for 51 minutes and deletes it. And not one tear shed. On August 19th, she searched Amber Fry, who is the girlfriend of Scott Peterson, who murdered his pregnant wife in 2002. She searched Fry's book deal, her net worth, and did people hate Amber Fry? While investigators are still draining oil tanks to pull the little girls out, she is calculating the market value of being a murderer's girlfriend. Then she changed her name and disappeared, and has never once been asked to take a polygraph. Now I want to address Nichol Kessinger's criminal history. In 2004 to 2005, in Aurora, Colorado, she stabbed a neighbor with a kitchen knife after being found inside that neighbor's home in a compromising position. She also has had multiple DUI charges. Every single one was dismissed. Prior stabbing, multiple DUIs, dismissed. Phone records placed her in Frederick the morning of the murders. Evidence deleted during the affair, while Shanann was still alive. The 51-minute calls that were deleted the night the family went missing, the calls back and forth between the police interviews, 4 hours of deleted news searches, a search for their home address, a search for Amber Fry's net worth. All of this while the children's bodies are still being recovered. She was never polygraphed, never charged, and never seriously questioned. You tell me why. Because if that were any of us with that record and those phone records, the conversation would have looked completely different. So the word leniency doesn't cover it. And the word coincident does not cover what the chart sees. So let's get into the charts now. Chart 1 that we're going to be looking at here is at 1:48 a.m. So this is the day of the crime. And if you want to learn how to decipher this chart, I do have a course. You can go to my website and I teach this. All right. So the first thing that we talked about was the Gemini on the ASC, and that's the ascendant, and that is the home of the victim. So we're going to find out a little about the victim. So before I looked at the single section in this entire chart, it signals communication and duality. So that in itself, because this case primarily revolves around texting and messages going back and forth, back and forth. So letters, texting, messages. It's the primary hub. So having Gemini as the ruler, we're going to follow Mercury, and Mercury stands for communication. So first, let's go here. Let's see. So we've now addressed that Gemini also meant that it means multiple victims. Now in section 1, we also have DNA at 2 degrees of Cancer, and Cancer rules the family, motherhood, children, pregnancy, bloodline. Shadan is pregnant with Nichol. Bella and Cece are upstairs. So before I reach the suspect, the chart has already shifted my focus to an entire family beneath DNA. Now we also have here on the inner dial, Uranus, the moon, Pluto. The moon rules Cancer. The family signature confirmed twice. Pluto introduces death, burial, and irreversible endings directly into that family. So Uranus breaks a future that was expected to continue. And in section 3, we have Mercury retrograde. Mercury and the sun. And Mercury rules Gemini, so the ASE brings me straight here. Communications is at the very center of this event. And it begins with a conversation, words that set everything into motion. And beneath that, we have Jupiter, Mars, and Mercury again. Mercury confirming itself, this is not a passing conversation, this is the catalyst. So this is saying that after a heated argument, action was taken. And Jupiter expands the consequences far beyond that room. And the sun beside Mercury is the father. With Mars directly beneath him, the father is taking action in the same placement. Section 2, the true node. The chart is pointing me toward motive, what someone believes they stand to gain or lose. And beneath it, we have Neptune and the sun. Neptune, the motive is hidden behind fantasy and deception, a future that doesn't actually exist. The sun brings me back again to the father. In section 4, the moon. Again, in the section of the home and what happens behind closed doors. Beneath that is Mercury, Saturn, Venus, and Venus again. Mercury keeps the conversation alive. Saturn brings emotional distance and finality. The bond inside the home is already broken. So here we see that. And Venus twice. And if you have my book, The FPR Method, on page 50, I go into detail about a double Venus. The double Venus tells me that there's emotional captivation has become a driving force. And the feminine influence here is the engine. Section 5, Venus is now alongside Jupiter. So here, if you see section 5, we have Venus along and we have Jupiter. The hidden motive from section 2 now shows, this is what it's showing me, where it's being directed. A relationship is significant enough to influence life and death decisions. So that is what that says. This relationship was that significant, like it's fatal, it's fatalistic. Venus is confirming Venus. The relationship itself becomes evidence. Section 7, this is the suspect section. Saturn retrograde and Pluto retrograde. Saturn is not influencing the suspect. Saturn is the suspect. So here we have the emotional coldness we've been tracking has arrived exactly where I expected it to be. Pluto brings elimination, control, irreversible endings. This is not someone who snapped. This is someone whose thinking has already hardened them. And the sun Saturn, Venus, father, Saturn confirming itself, Venus linking relationship directly to the person carrying out the crime. Section 12, we have algol. Beside the part of fortune, algol in a homicide chart always signals catastrophic force. The inner dial, Saturn, Mercury, Venus, and Uranus. That's emotional detachment, communication. The relationship interruption, still here in the final section, they are the foundation of this event. Now we're going to jump to the 1:40 p.m. chart. This is the police are now inside the house. And while investigators are moving through that home, two stories are running at the same time. One is visible, law enforcement, one invisible, phones, active calls being made, evidence being deleted, while officers are only standing feet away. Section 3 here is Mars in retrograde besides Lilith. And for the first time, the outside feminine influence appears directly beside action. Lilith is the woman outside the established structure. She's present, aware, connected. Beneath them, we have Mercury, Uranus, Mercury, Venus. This is electronic communication surrounding the relationship on both sides. Another conversation is running while this investigation unfolds, and it is not happening in that living room. Section 4, Neptune retrograde confirming Neptune. The deception is structured. It existed before officers even stepped inside. So beneath that, we have Moon and Pluto, the family, concealed death. Officers think they are on a welfare check. The chart knows they're inside a homicide. Section 7, the suspect section, algol on the outer dial. Beneath that, we have Saturn, Mercury, and Venus, emotionally detached from the marriage, communicating with another woman, while his family is the center of missing persons investigation. The chart is not describing a stranger here. It is describing the husband. Still texting, by the way, still connected to that relationship with an officer standing next to him. Now, in Section 8, we have DNA returning to the outer dial. This was not one victim. Beneath it, we have Venus, Uranus, Moon, Pluto. The relationship, electronic communication, mother and children, death and concealment. The chart refuses to separate the affair from the victims. They are connected because they were connected. And while investigators moved through that house, television was on. First, it showed a pregnant woman and an unborn child, then a skull submerged in oil. A pregnant mother, death, concealment, and oil. Neptune in this chart appears in the section 4 and confirms itself in section 10. Neptune, oil. Body, section 4. This is the location. It is telling us the location. And the themes playing on that screen are exact themes that are in the chart and has been running since section 1. Now, both charts, every section, same structure, same family, same suspect, same relationship that the chart will not release because the chart doesn't remember names, it remembers patterns. And the pattern of this case has never fully closed. So the same relationship that runs through every section of both timestamps belonged to a woman who called the suspect for 51 minutes the night his family was reported missing and deleted it. Who never cried publicly, who researched Amber Fry's net worth while children's bodies were still being recovered from oil tanks, and who was never polygraphed. There's also rumors that her father has connections to law enforcement and that she's in hiding. Either way, there is a woman out there who needs to be investigated further because many times, and I have shown you through the proof in the actual documents that they have, that it warrants another interview. So why is she being protected? You tell me in the comments. I am your host, BW Sloan, and this has been the FPR Method. You can find me on TikTok. If you're interested in learning what I do, we have an amazing team of women who help solve cases. If you would like to join us, feel free to message me. Please be kind to one another and in the comments.
CSI changed how we saw crime. Forensic pattern recognition changes how we solve it. Learn how to identify suspect-victim dynamics, detect timeline distortions, flag inconsistencies in case data, and reconstruct a crime scene as if you were there when it happened. A system once used to track planetary motion has evolved into a modern investigative tool that exposes hidden patterns in criminal behavior known as the FPR method. The Forensic Pattern Recognition Program is designed for analysts, researchers, law enforcement, private investigators, and truth seekers searching for real answers. Train in as little as 6 months, self-paced online. The future of CSI is here. Apply now at fprmethod.com and step into the future of forensic investigation.